Women entrepreneurs strive and thrive in the crisis. We have Chanta Sinha from India, a member of BRICS Women Business Alliance India chapter, founder and chair of a Man-Bank and Man-Foundation, which is India's first bank to help women in rural areas. And Mandy Ying from China, associate of corporate engagement at Goldman Sachs. And Ruby Xing, founder of Hello Future Academy and author of 7 education-related books from China. Let's start with our first question to Cheta. We know you are a famous social activist working to empower women in rural areas by teaching entrepreneurship skills, access to land and means of production. And as you said, in this pandemic, the lack of a phone left many quarantined women completely cut off from their family. So could you please introduce the latest condition of women in rural area in India? And in your opinion, how can we help them?
Sure. It's an honor to be a part of this panel, and thanks for inviting me. So it's very, that if you talk about India and Indian women, generally people would say, right, particularly in rural India, it's huge, it's fragmented. The agriculture sector is actually finding a lot of challenges on one side. But on the other side, when you see women that in that challenging situation also, how they are finding the ways and the solutions. And I many times feel that policymakers should listen to these women, policymakers or even myself. When I run a women's bank, Mandeshi Bank, you would be surprised to know that, these poor women who are doing streets, they are doing business on the street. They said that we want an opportunity of savings. They never talked about credit. Why? Because they wanted to save their hard-earned money and manage the finance, which clearly indicates that women see their role not as a housewife, not just as taking care of the children and household, but they also want to go beyond that. And so they're looking for those opportunities. And so Mandeshi started a bank for that. Now, coming to the answer of your question, that what is the condition today in post-pandemic? How are women, are really women are able to display the resilience? And I would just like to share some of the stories actually from the grassroots. Let me share the story of Manisha. She actually was in Mumbai and she was staying with her husband in Mumbai, working in Mumbai as a security guard. And then because of pandemic, she had to come back. She migrated back to her village and started a business of buffaloes and goats and started doing a milk vending. Now, Manisha actually wanted to complete her high school and wanted to become a pharmacist, but she couldn't do that because family did not have enough resources. So when she came back from Mumbai, she started a milk business. But she had to send the bills also to her client. What Manisha did is that she didn't have a smartphone. And so Mandeshi Bank provided a credit product where women can buy smartphone and can do as in the previous session it was mentioned how that technology is the enabling tool for women. So she bought the smartphone, she downloaded the accounting app and sent the bill to her client to whom she's selling milk digitally, which actually brought her, being in a very small village, a digital source of money. When you have, because a lot of us, we talk about digitalization and women and smartphone, but the most important part, and we talk about digital financial literacy, but the most important part is that how is she going to get the digital source of money? She may know to do the digital transaction, but if that ecosystem is not there, where she can get the digital source of money, then she won't be able to do the transaction. So the first thing which Mandeshi Bank did was that to get women a smartphone and create a credit product for that. The second thing, designing the digital financial literacy in such a way that they not only learn to do the financial transaction, but they also learn to do accounting and sending the bills so that they can get their digital money. And the third is that, how do they get access to the e-commerce and digital marketing, right? And with this, Manisha was able to get the digital source of money. She could create a digital history of her business, and which made her eligible for the borrowings, loans, right? And in India, particularly, we have seen that women don't own land. And I do think that not only in India, but Africa, Asia, there is this whole issue of how many, if we see the data of either World Bank or UN, how many women are owning the land, how many women have the ownership of household. And I very strongly say that women like Manisha, who are breaking century old patriarchal system on one side, but at the same time, by creating these digital sources and all, they become an eligible borrower. And not only that, but they also can download the app where they can see that, app of ownership of property, ownership of land. They can see how their husbands are owning the land. And when they go for the borrowing to the banks, they can say that, okay, I am co-lending my land with my husband, and this is my collateral. What I'm trying to say is that entitlements is so important for women, ownership is so important for women, and I'm proud to share with you all. But running bank and business school for rural women, there are so many women like Manisha Jimal there are so many women like Manisha Jimal. We have reached more than 700,000 women. By 22, we are looking to impact 1 million women entrepreneurs in rural India and trying to create the ecosystem where not only women will have a digital smartphone, but they will be able to own the property. They will get the loans for working capital. They are already getting it and become a successful entrepreneur. What will this result in? As it was mentioned that when women, actually the income of women increases, the income of household increases. But the most important part I feel is that if women's income increases, the local economy also drives. And when the local economy drives, the country GDP grows. And with this, I would say that, what our women say is that never provide poor solutions to poor people. They are smart. And with this, I would say that our women are actually, even they have never been to high school, but today they are part of e-commerce, they are doing digital banking, they are creating their digital source. And Mandeshi has created an alternative credit score system for women. And I do feel that, either it is Asia Pacific, either it is Africa, or being a part of the BRICS Bank, we are also now working out that, if we want to work on women entrepreneurship, we have to create an alternative credit score, alternative titlements, and ownership of land for women. Then only they will be able to drive in the formal economy. So with this, I would say that this whole penetration of smartphone have created so much of opportunities for women. And today, in the beginning of the pandemic, only 10% of women had access to smartphone in my area, and now it has increased to 40%. So what I want to say is that women are ready to invest in smartphone. Women are ready to go for these digital platform. And once they get that entry, nobody can stop that. And I do believe that globally also, this whole index of women-owned business is much, much below, which we can actually be very proud and take it upscale. But at the same time, I know India is also lagging behind. But I'm sure that if these women get an opportunity, then we can actually improve our index. And another thing which I would like, later on we can speak, that how do we measure all these things? How do we replicate? And these actually pilots which we are doing should become a macro system for the whole economy. So thanks, and I'll be glad to reply if you have any other question. But I would just like to say and briefly make a statement that time has come that globally, even either it is at a BRICS bank or it is at a G20 or it is at a G7, all where we have to talk about women entrepreneurship, we have to talk about capital for women, and we have to talk about digital knowledge for women. With this, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. The story of Malaysia is quite inspiring. So let's get back to Ruby. As an entrepreneur, have you met any difficulties or opportunities during this time, just like Malaysia, the similar situation with them?
Yeah, as a woman entrepreneur, it's very typical situation that you met similar difficulties. For example, in the pandemic, I have an offline big school. All the school were closed almost 1 year. So how can we survive almost 60 staff and their families financially over the pandemic? So this is my first question when I heard the pandemic, because at the very beginning, I know it's coming. We don't know it coming that long. So at the beginning, I really want to, lead the women group, because most of my staff are women entrepreneurs with me, because they join my team because of I'm a woman. I want to support my child with better education. So that's why I founded a very good daycare and the preschool in China, in Beijing. So since all of my staff are women, most of them. So as a group, we think how we can survive the pandemic. We began to think all the possibilities, but we realized that we have to go online. But as an offline school, it's so impossible to go online. Most of people have the stereotype, especially for the 0 to 6 years old. Our target, clients are our target group. But during the pandemic, I'm very sure that I need to be the role model instead of sitting back. So I decided to have some broadcasting and the short videos on the internet, and to try to provide online courses for the parents instead of the 0 to 6 years old child. And at the beginning, as a group, we don't use to the online things. We almost interact with the children, and we all know it is our advantage. But when the crisis is coming, your advantage becomes your disadvantage, and you don't know where to find your advantage. At that time, my approach is to learning by doing. So as a woman, I think our advantages will be the adjustment abilities. For example, if I'm a girl, I'm single, I can get used to this kind of working environment. If I'm a mom, I'm with my baby, and I also want to get my career, I need to adjust really quick. I think that's an advantage of the women. So we learning by doing that until now. After 1 year after pandemic, we right now have over 200, anchors or the online teachers. But previously, we only have 60 offline teachers. If you ask me before the pandemic, I will never imagine that. Because you always know the crisis is like a box to lock you in, but the crisis actually is a box for you to step on. And during this pandemic, I think I'm stronger psychologically, even though financially we have some bleeding, we have some problem, but for your head level, for your psychology level, you really get onto the box. The box is called the crisis. So it's very typical for the women to get similar crisis. Not only the bigger crisis like a pandemic, but smaller crisis like you're pregnant without expectations, or you suddenly have a family members, have some disease you need to handle with. So the crisis is not only big one you need to tackle, also the smaller one. So I think this is our nature, the women's nature, to overcome the no matter bigger crisis or smaller crisis. But what you need is to treat the crisis like a box you step on, not the box you put yourself, locked in. This is what I'm, the difficulties I'm at, and what my attitude towards this crisis.
Thank you, Ruby. And Mandy, you just heard of China's sharing about financial demands, mobile banking, something like that. So in Goldman Sachs, I know you as the program lead for Goldman Sachs 10,000 women in China. So what are the most challenging difficulties women-led business facing with, and how does your program help them?
Thank you, Sam. And it's an almost honor to join this amazing panel with amazing women entrepreneurs such as Chetna and Ruby, who's also a Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women graduate, to discuss what women need in this unprecedented time. And perhaps before I address your question, Sam, it might be helpful to take a step back and provide a 1-minute introduction of what Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women program is. So we launched this program 13 years ago to support female entrepreneurs globally, and in China, in India, in Kenya, Brazil, South Africa, and so on. And today we've supported over 100,000 women globally. And in China, since 2008, so shortly after the financial crisis, 10,000 Women program from Goldman Sachs has trained over 19,000 female entrepreneurs, such as Ruby, in China through business and management education program that will partner with some of the most world-class academic institutions such as Tsinghua University, and also providing access to finance, coaching, and mentorship across China, and particularly in Beijing, Hangzhou, Chengdu, and Kunming. And I work very closely with all these female entrepreneurs in China all over the country, and really seeing COVID-19 disrupted the world and really ushering the sharpest global recession in recent history, and obviously kind of really magnifying many of the challenges personally and also professionally that are rarely posing on female entrepreneurs in a normal day, but especially so in COVID-19. And as a matter of fact, we recently conducted another global survey amongst our 10,000 women graduates all over the world, as we wanted to see a year out from the start of COVID, how they're doing, and also to make sure we keep the focus on what women need at this critical time. And we've heard from over 1,000 female entrepreneurs all over the world, including a little bit closer to 300 in China. And we found that your question, Sam, nearly all of our program graduates has experienced some sort of difficulty running their business. And obviously the foremost challenge was financial, but also a close second one was related to the unique role of women as caregiver and responsibility for running family and business altogether, just as Ruby has mentioned just now. But we're also very delighted to see that our alumni adapted very quickly and pivoting their business models and adopting digital tools to success in this new environment, just as Diane mentioned in the former panel. And we've also seen more than 3/4 of our graduates remain very optimistic about the future business prospects. And we understand that with the right support, we think they can realize the immense opportunities ahead. And zooming into China, particularly, we were able to see that our female entrepreneurs really thrive from the first in, first out effect, because China has really taken control of COVID at a very early stage. And we're able to see our graduates, even though they've experienced challenge of the drop in revenues and employments, for example, they were able to get out of those challenges much more quickly than the rest of the world, and also remaining a much higher confidence level because of that. And that is, I think, many thanks to the adoption of the digital tools, as Ruby mentioned, many kind of really agilely turn the offline business into online and really leverage the online marketing and online sales to ensure the competitiveness of their business. And some of the things that we're also very happy to see beyond running the business and really taking care of the family was that even though our graduates didn't say that purpose beyond profits was as critical as surviving their business, we're actually able to see a much higher percentage of our Chinese female entrepreneurs giving back to their community, paying it forward to the bigger society, even though they are experiencing their own challenges and it's very challenging time. And in terms of the support, the Goldman Sachs and the 10,000 Women Program has supported our graduates from the very beginning. I recall really at the very beginning of the COVID outbreak last year, I called every single graduate based in Wuhan and in Hubei province, and they really cried and share how desperate they are. They're not able to run their business. They were really locked down at home with some of their kids, and they really appreciate the care and the rapid support that Goldman Sachs were able to lend to them. But then subsequently, we did a couple of more tangible things, including conducting a pulse survey just for our Chinese graduates to understand what they need. And then subsequently, we've hosted town halls, really gathering the senior stakeholders from Goldman Sachs and share our unique perspective from Goldman Sachs to our graduates in terms of what are some of the industries that are still thriving under COVID that would kind of have a benefit in access to finance. So kind of some of the industries and sectors for the female entrepreneurs to look into, but also working very closely, as I said, with Tsinghua University into launching an inaugural series of virtual webinars ranging from how to set up your online business and digital transformation, all the way to really training up a new generation of talents that will be agile with these new kind of working from home contexts, and to the way to kind of really kind of incorporating sustainability and environment, the ESG element into their business, even though they are just small and medium business, but they're also very critical to incorporate the ESG element. So by really supporting from the education, the coaching and mentorship perspective, we're happy to see really the female entrepreneurs pivoting to much more positive trends this year.
Thank you. Let's turn to India again. Chetna, we know you are working actively in women's empowerment. So could you share any best practices of ambitioning and leading initiatives to promote women's entrepreneurship? Are there any new ideas invented by women-led business?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks. And it was very interesting to listen, Ruby and Mandy, about, this whole, how women are themselves creating the ecosystem for women entrepreneurs. I always feel that, and also let me talk about, as you mentioned, that women business leaders, right? It is, while working with Mandeshi Bank, what did we learn from our women? We were providing micro loans, we were providing micro savings to our women. But our women wanted to scale their business, right? And when you want to scale the business, so microcredit, everybody knows that microcredit is there, and there is all the ecosystem is there for microcredit, where you can have a credit rating score. There are microcredit institutions all over the world now, particularly in Asia and Africa, where they provide the micro loans without collateral. There's no with the peer pressure. But the whole challenge is that how do we graduate from microcredit to micro enterprise, where it's an individual entrepreneurship, right? Here, the peer pressure or group is not there. And it's not, I always believe that individual enterprise is equally important. Now, how do these women, how can the challenge one is that how would they get an access to capital? And in that sense, there are two ways of getting access to capital, right? One is debt and another is equity. Now, when you are in a very nascent stage of business, it is very difficult to set up the company, get the equity investors and all that. What I have learned from our women is that they do have an individual enterprise, they do want a working capital loan, and the major challenge is that they don't get working capital loan. Why? Because the ecosystem which are required, because what are the pains of the lender also has to be understood, right? That what is stopping lender to give loans to women who own micro enterprise? Number one, they need collateral. Number two, they need digital history. Number three, they need to see that how much access these women have at the market, in the market, selling their product. Number four, how are they efficient with their cost of production? Now, how can you give those details to the lender? In case of a regular entrepreneur, I'm talking about men entrepreneur, all this ecosystem is available, and they have their balance sheets, they have their all these things. And I'm sure when Mandy was talking about the Goldman Sachs 10,000 women entrepreneurs, I see even in India this mentoring is done, right, where you mentor them and see that our women who want to become and scale their businesses, with their micro enterprises, they should have their accounts in place, they should have their digital history in place, and for that mentoring and handholding is required. And the one way is to do it at the individual level, which is great, but you cannot scale that, right? So here the most important part is that in every country they have these ministries of micro enterprise, ministries of small and medium enterprise, and I strongly feel that these ministries have to create the open system where that data can be entered of these women. See, I believe very strongly, on one side you help these women to scale their business, provide them loan for micro enterprise, but on other side you have to create the data and make this micro enterprise visible globally. How do you do that? Which are the public platform where these data can be entered? And what we at Mandeshi Bank are doing, we have created this whole system of creating this alternative credit score system, and where women can, in the data, prove their and showcase their entrepreneurship journey, which will make sure that they have become a mature entrepreneur, and now they can handle a bigger loan. Because unless they get the access to capital, they cannot scale. Unless they get the access to mainstream market, they cannot scale their produce because they are not sure about the market. So I do believe that data plays a very significant role, not just to showcase only for the countries like statistics, but also for the lender to feel confident to provide loans to these women. And I also feel that globally it becomes very important that how BRIC Bank can create these data platform for women entrepreneurs in the country like, Brazil, Russia, India, China, because we are going to learn from each other, right? Which are the digital platform which will give this data? And again, I would just like to say that in many countries, even like in country like China, a lot of things have been resolved digitally where in India, we can learn. And from India, where women have been like a great business leaders, have represented themselves on the boards, and how they have become, because I also would like to add that it's not just setting up my enterprise and scaling it, but taking the role of leadership in the sector and say that, with me, as Goldman Sachs talks about the 10,000 women entrepreneurs, and when Ruby was mentioning, it's now the time has come that we actually encourage the women business leaders, have millions of women business leaders representing globally, and we can show that, countries should feel ashamed of themselves if their women business leaders do not have a space on boards, do not have a ownership of land, do not get an access to capital, because I do think that now there is a time that the countries who are performing better, they should be appreciated, they should be awarded, so that there is a competition of celebration, right? If my country actually shows that, we have millions of business leaders and we have a board members who are women in our board, like in India we have 30% of women should be in the jobs, and in similar way I think that we should talk about the entrepreneurship also, that how many women are sitting on the boards, because they are not only, it's not just quota, they are going to bring the diverse viewpoint. And it is going to, because if you actually see the study, it clearly shows that the boards which had more number of women on their as a member of the board, those companies have performed much better, which clearly indicates that the leadership of women is not only required among women, but it is also required across boards and across country. So in this sense, I would say, and I would just like to end with very interesting story of one of our women who actually is the radio jockey, Kerabai. When we were starting radio, we were not getting the license. And everything like, how will women run the radio? And this radio jockey, Kerabai, she cannot read and write. But she said, I can sing and I can make poems. And I have learned from my generation, previous generation. And she today is running, she has become a famous radio jockey. And she said that we can run the bank, we can run our businesses. Why can't we run the radio? And I am seeing that women are actually in every field. And when she became a radio jockey, the type of program she brought in on the radio was very different than the regular one. So I see that when women comes in this sector, they bring new ideas, and if they are given an opportunity of the leadership, they can drive the economy, they can scale the country's GDP, and I also find that they can set some very ideal parameters which globally one should take up.
Thank you so much. Mandy, we know Goldman Sachs Women Project have a global presence, including in India. Would you tell us more on the women entrepreneurship programs goes on in a global basis? And based on your research and report, are there any similarities and differences among regions and countries, for example, between China and India, something like that? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Sam. And I'm also happy to share that actually India, China is the largest market of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women program, but India is the second and very close to become the first one, because India is currently having very active in classroom training at the moment with Indian School of Business, and really trying to support the female entrepreneurs in India. So we're definitely very active in markets like India. And I mentioned slightly about kind of our recent research and how our Chinese female graduates were thriving in some of the data. So happy to share a little bit more color if that's of interest. So for example, in the first in, first out effect, COVID-19, we're able to see, for example, 43% of our Chinese entrepreneurs reporting a decline in revenues, and 40% decreasing the number of people they employ. And globally, we're seeing 60% of decline in revenues and 50% of decline in employment. So this just to say the Chinese entrepreneurs has reported a kind of a much faster kind of getting out of the pandemic in terms of economic impact, but also reported a higher confidence level than their global peers. So for example, we are seeing an 86%, really high percentage reporting from the Chinese entrepreneurs that they feel they're confident about the future business prospects, whereas the global level were 78%. And in terms of the digital adoption, which is a very important element of our finding, in response to COVID-19, we've seen really 75% of our Chinese alumni pivoted or changed their business models. which is 5% more than what we're seeing globally. And the strongest example was in the digital realm, where the adoption of digital tools increased by a global leading 15%. And if I could perhaps share examples of what we're seeing in the rest of the markets, for example, on the digital front. So in China, we're seeing kind of 91% of the entire digital adoption. And in the UK, it's 59%. And in Africa, it's 69%. And the US, it's 50%. In India, 78%, so a little bit higher. So just to give a taste of the landscape that we're seeing from our female entrepreneurs of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women Program. And also very interestingly, on the purpose beyond profit, I think that is the most interesting one. So the way we survey our female entrepreneurs, we first ask about how importantly do you think it is to give back to your community before COVID and also during COVID. So the response of our Chinese communities is that only 58% reporting that it's important, versus globally, there's 78% saying it's very important to give back globally. However, when we ask what did you actually do to your community, we've seen 89% of our Chinese female entrepreneurs already giving back to their community by donation or supporting, mentoring more women in the community before COVID-19. And also 79% say they will continue to do so since the embark of COVID-19. So this is very interesting element, really proving that the Chinese female entrepreneurs here really, they are walking the walk, even though they're not talking the talk. And also very interestingly, we've also seen the Chinese entrepreneurs were more concerned with the state of the environment than their global peers, though they're less concerned with the impact of their business on the environment and the impact of the environment on business. And in our view, we think this discrepancy was really reflecting an increasing appetite for the ESG consideration, even though they have not been in the historical forms.
Great, thank you. And Ruby, Mindy just talked about women's confidence in business. So in this tough time, Ruby, what are some of the characteristics of women leaders you believe to be valuable in the business community?
I think the most important characteristic will be the learning from mistake abilities, because as a woman, we have so many identity. In the family, we are mother, wife. In the school, we are the founder. In the company, we are the CEO and the founder. So, the most, stereotype that the mom and the woman has to be perfect. You need to balance work and life, and you need to be strong as the man. This is all the perfection in your head. So I think for me, to raise up women's confidence is just to learn from the mistakes. Don't take the mistake as a result. Take the mistake as the process. For example, I made a mistake in a decision making of the company. For example, I met pandemic. I opened new school. I have some offline branch. It's a mistake, but we have to learn from it. If we take it as a result, we can now stand up and move on. So this is my own strategy to raise my confidence. So my confidence is built up by my mistakes. So I always have a mistake journal. So every time I made a mistake, I write it down, and I will focusing on how I can learn from it. And as a mom, I teach this to my little girl. She is a 3rd grader. As a child in this pandemic, in this competitive society, as a younger woman, as a girl, she also met some pressure, competition. She doesn't know how to handle with it. And she is learning from me and writing the mistakes and helping her from the learning during the pandemic. So I think as a woman, we are so different with men. We don't need to be the same as men, but we have to figure out the special way, to be ourselves. And the special way is that we are much easier to reflect our mistakes than the man. And it's easier for us to adjust from the older mistake to a newer opportunity. So this is, I think, is the most important, valuable characteristic of women. And the second characteristic, I think, is just to be focused. For example, I love education. If education industry in that China met some difficulties and I give up, I move to another industry, the same thing will happen over and over again. So you need to have a passion on what you love, and you need to be focused. For example, on the first day of my entrepreneur day, I know it's not easy in the education industry, but I need to be focused like over 30 or 40 years old until I died. So I need to be focused in this industry. As long as you're focused, you can have the ability to achieve the success. So right now, I'm in the education industry for over 10 years, and right now I can see in the next 20 years or 40 years I can be successful. So it's all about focus abilities. Okay, thank you. That is all my sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I like your special way very much. Thank you, Ruby. So the last question for all, what recommendations can you give to your sisters on seeking their dreams? Chetna, what's your opinion? What recommendations can you give to them?
So I would say, if you close your eyes, and if you are thinking that there is a CEO conference, what would you see while after closing the eyes about imagining the CEO? I know if you ask generally somebody, like, close your eyes, there is a CEO conference, what do you see? And many of would say that we would see like men in suit and boot and tie, all these CEOs are sitting, right? That would be the immediate reaction. I would say that now the time has come where not only, as my peer panelists mentioned, that walk the talk. And I would say in the last recommendation that Mandishi has decided that within 2 years, we will have a 500,000 CEOs, women CEOs, and be proud of that. Make ourselves proud, make our women proud, make our country proud, and make our world proud. That, we have to talk that these millions CEO by 25, why can't we have that? And so I would just say that everyone has to think in that way, that we will have millions women CEO and see how the world will be different.
Great. Thank you so much, ma'am. Ruby, what's your take?
Yeah, I think, I really suggest that all the women take it as a different gender than the man. We don't need to be man, but we still figure out a way to be strong. Like what I said, you can learn from mistakes and you can focus on a single one industry and you will be successful. Thank you.
And Mandy, what's your view?
Thanks, Sam. I'll say 3 things. One is really curate your own network of support, because it takes a village to raise a baby, to foster a family, but also to curate your own business. So really have your network of support and also have your network of mentor and coaches, and to really enable an ecosystem for build up for success. And second is to focus on talent development and the new generation, and also continue to build a strong case and enhance your competitiveness in the digital transformation, because that's just the trend of the future. And thirdly, and very importantly, pay it forward. If you receive support from your family, from your business, from your employees, from the community, pay it forward and bring it back and to support and enable more women, which will ultimately build up a better ecosystem, a better society for the future. And these are all the things that Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women really believes in, and working hard to kind of play a part into supporting that ecosystem. So we believe by joining forces, we will bring a brighter future to the female entrepreneurs in China, but also more broadly globally.